So welcome to the Azure Databricks and Notebooks in Fabric, a transformation dream come true session. We will do a little bit of presentation, a little bit of demonstration, and then maybe we'll have some questions during the session. If there are any questions, feel free to shoot them out or write them in the chat, and we will take them up as we go, because we don't want to lose track of all those precious questions that might come. But first and foremost, let me just kick off and say a little bit about myself. My name is Emilie Rønning. I'm a data engineer, solution architect, project manager, whatever well, in Norway we call it, I can be a potato. So I can basically do whatever my client wants me to do on the data side of things, not everything else. I'm based in Oslo, Norway. I'm a data community event and user group organizer. So I'm organizing the Data Saturday in Oslo. So if you want to have some more precious content, feel free to come to Oslo in August. Or if you want to do more Fabric specific stuff, then you can also join us at Fabric February in Oslo next year, February 6th. When I don't do data stuff, I train to run a 10K, and my next goal is to be able to run a 10K under 55 minutes. So we will see if that will happen in October. So if I see any of you at, for instance, PAS or in Fabric February, then come up and ask me if I made my goal or if I need to train some more. And other than that, I also love snacks. So I am the snack queen of the Fabric February trio. But yeah, I also tried to create a tagline for myself. I don't know if it really works, but I am a data girl in an Azure world, which means that I am mostly working with Microsoft technologies. But enough about me. This is what we are going to do for the next hour. We're going to see if Databricks and Fabric notebooks can actually turn our transformation into a dream come true. So what I will do first is introduce you to Azure Databricks and Microsoft Fabric. We will take a look at notebooks and that being a natural part of your transformation journey. We will go from source to report-ready data, or at least try to do that. My demo gods are not with me today, so we'll see how far we get, but at least we will try. And then the fourth topic is just some elements that you should consider if you're going to choose between the two, or if you're going to combine the two in one solution. Does that sound good? Yeah. Very good. Let's get cracking. Okay, so the first point, introduction to Azure Databricks and Microsoft Fabric. So when we're working with data, we want to transform that data into insights, and we have different types of data. You have structured data, you have semi-structured data, and you have unstructured data. And you want to make that into something that we can actually take action on, so actionable insights. And how do you do that? We sprinkle some magic on it, or we use, for instance, notebooks. And Azure Databricks is one tool that you can choose to do, namely the transformation or the magic, to turn it from something that is just plain data to something that you actually can take action on. And what Databricks says about themselves is that they are a unified open analytics platform for building, developing, sharing, and maintaining enterprise-grade data, analytics, and AI solutions at scale. Whew. That is a mouthful. But what it essentially means is that you can use Databricks as a platform to ingest, transform, and load your data to your designated storage place. And you can put this workload into automated workloads with workflows inside Databricks. So what you see is that they have different types of features, data sharing, data engineering, data governance, and so on. We will focus mainly on the data engineering part today, but I wanted to show you the capabilities that they have because they are also very similar to what you can find in Fabric. So Azure Databricks and Microsoft Fabric, in my eyes, in terms of transforming data for reporting and analysis purposes, are very, very similar. For the data engineering part, you can use the Lakehouse platform to store your structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data in the same place. So you can fetch it for whatever purpose that you have. You can write your transformation using notebooks as code, and you have 4 predefined languages, which is really nice. And then you can orchestrate, like I said, your workflows with workflows that are low code and more of a drag and drop way of doing it. If you are familiar with Azure Data Factory, then moving from Azure Data Factory to Databricks workflows won't be that big of a deal. There are, of course, some differences, but it's pretty much the same. If you get the idea of Azure Data Factory, then you also get the idea of orchestrating the workflows with Databricks workflows. So, okay, the demo time. Let's get started and just take a look at Databricks. So I will open my portal. So the first thing that you should notice when you embark on the journey with Databricks is that you have to be within the Azure portal, which means that you will have to launch your workplace. And when you do that, you get a new tab open with the Databricks, and this is kind of the whole thing that you will see and where you will work. And within that user interface, you have the different tabs that you want to do the different work. You have workspace for all of the notebooks that you want to create. I can, in my workspace and user folder, I can create my own notebook. So let me just do that right now, and then you will see how that looks. So with 3 clicks of a button, I have a notebook that is in my user folder, which means that it's not private. Other people can see it, but it's more private than loading it up to GitHub directly. So let me just do demo 1 so that we have a cool, nice name that everybody understands what is going on. And this is basically where you will write all of your transformation. And we will go through that in deeper details later, but I wanted to show you the interface of it. Under the catalog, you can see all the tables that you have currently created and also the databases. So you're able to divide your meta store into different databases and then also different tables, depending on the layers that you choose for your data transformation. If you don't want to do any notebook activities, you could also use the SQL editor to add to query existing tables, more like a standard data warehouse experience for those of you who want to do that. But I would say a fairly nice overview of how Databricks looks and the capabilities that they have. Last thing I will just show you is the job runs. Here you have all the jobs that you want to set up for your transformation or automation of your transformation, so that you don't have to go in and manually click the button every time. Yes. Okay, let's jump back. So for Microsoft Fabric, they have a bit of a shorter tagline with Microsoft Fabric is an all-in-one analytics solution for enterprises. And they contain multiple experiences for multiple purposes. And what we will focus on today, it's the data engineering part. And the data engineering experience is for storing big data in lakehouses, for querying, reporting, and sharing. Which means that you can use the lakehouse to store structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. You can write your transformation using notebooks as code in 4 predefined languages, and you can orchestrate your data transformation using no-code/low-code pipelines. And for those of you who paid very close attention, you will see that those 3 points are pretty similar to what we just witnessed in on the Databricks slide. So you can do pretty much the same thing in both tools. And that is what's so neat about it, because you don't really have to, at least for the transformation of the data for your insights and analysis purposes, you can't really go wrong with the choice when you're just starting off. But you might want to base the decision on a few more points other than the 3 points that I have here before you make a decision on whether or not to go for one tool before the other or combining them. But we will get into that later as well. So let's just do a quick introduction to Microsoft Fabric. When you go to Microsoft Fabric or powerbi.com, this is the user interface that you will see when you log in. You will see all the Microsoft Fabric experiences, and depending on what kind of license you have, you either just have access to the Power BI features, or with a Fabric license or a what's it called? Free trial. You can get access to all of the Fabric experiences. And what we will focus on is the signups data engineering. Don't worry, if you click the wrong box on the first page, you don't lose all the accesses to the other ones. It's just for you to kind of decrease the amount of impressions that you get. But these features here are the ones that are most common for, or at least what Microsoft deems as most common for a data engineer to use. So they want to kind of give you it for free. Here you go. This is all that you need to take care of. If you want to look at other stuff, you can go down here, data engineering. You can click on another experience. So let's go for Data Factory, and then you will see other options. There are some overlapping options like data pipeline, because of course you want to orchestrate your notebooks when you're transforming data, but you might also want to use data pipelines for ingesting data. Let's go back to the data engineering, and then I will go into my workspace. This is how it looks. This is for demo purposes. When I created this workspace, there might be something here that you that wasn't available when I created this, and that was folders. So it looks like a mess because there's no structure. I've tried to kind of make it a little bit nice with the naming standard, but it's still hard and it still looks like a mess. But now we have folders, which is really nice. So we can move all of our stuff around in different stages if we want to use the Medallion architecture to differentiate. We can create the folders. We can choose which items we want to move in the different folders. I would like to move this to bronze, move here, and then it's magically moved. The same thing for gold. I can move these to gold, and then it's a little less messy already, which is really nice. But yeah, the idea here is that if you are familiar with working with with Microsoft Fabric, if you're familiar with working with Power BI, then this interface is going to be very, very easy to adopt for you as well for the data engineering part. It looks exactly the same, at least high level, as before Fabric. And what we have now is just more capabilities and features inside the same universe, I would say. So when you're in a workspace, you can create a new notebook by clicking on New and Notebook. The notebook will pop up. And it's somewhat similar to what we already saw in Databricks with the notebook and the structure of it. I can add a lakehouse if I have created one. I have one that is related to the bronze, so I will add that. And then I can rename my notebook with demo notebook, for instance. And that is automatically saved. If I go back to my workspace now, I have a notebook that is outside the folder, so I can choose to add that to bronze, but I will keep it there for now. And then I will jump back to the presentation, but I just wanted to give you a feel of what Fabric looks like on the inside, and essentially just say it is exactly the same as when we worked with Power BI without all the Fabric greatness. So nothing much differences there, that is.
Question.
Yes.
Why should you link it to a lakehouse, Jonas asks.
Oh, yes. So when we're doing transformations, you might want to get the data from somewhere. And a lakehouse is a very great place to store the data, both from a raw format to a transformed format. So I will show you that when we go through the transformation from A to C, or Å, as we say in Norwegian. So that you get a sense of why we're moving the data around in the lakehouses. You could also use fetch the data from warehouses or other different sources, but you want to store it within the lakehouses. And also the lakehouse is a part of one lake, so you have all of the data available in one place for all workspaces, which is also really nice. So yeah.
Does that answer your question, Jonas?
Yes, good. Very good. Okay, so let's jump back to the presentation. Okay, getting started with data transformation. So when you're using Azure Databricks within the Azure portal, you need some more components than just Azure Databricks. You will need a storage account that you set up to store all the data like you do for Fabric in the Lakehouse. You will need a key vault to store the keys where you are, because you're going to mount your Databricks to the Lakehouse so that the Databricks has read and write authorization on the storage account. And then you're also going to need access to a Azure DevOps repo or a Git repository if you choose to do that. But we're going to do Azure DevOps repo in this case. So there are a few more components that we need to think about within the Azure portal before we dig into Azure Databricks full on. For Microsoft Fabric, you have, as you saw, everything within the same user interface, and you just have to click a button to get a new resource. And like I also just showed you, adding the existing lakehouse to a notebook fixes the authorization within Fabric. So you don't really have to think about that much of configuration when it comes to Fabric other than in comparison to using Azure Databricks. So that is absolutely a key advantage. Yes. So Microsoft Fabric is just a few clicks needed. but for Azure Databricks, we need to configure a bit more before we can get our solution up and running in a stable format. You can always, of course, with both play around with demo data and so on, but it's usually not recommended when you start building a solution for a huge enterprise that is going to run on a stable and optimized fashion. Then you want all your ducks in a row and all the keys locked away safely. But yeah. Okay, so let's jump on to the next topic, notebooks, a natural part of your data transformation.
We have a question from
Yes.
Jonas. Is there a safe place to store your keys and secrets when you are using Microsoft Fabric, or should you still consider using Key Vault?
Yes, so when I have used Microsoft Fabric for my clients, I have set up, oh, I can't remember the name now, but it's not keys, it's bigger than that. It's not managed identities either, but it's
Principal. Service principal?
Yes, it's service principal. Thank you. 10 points. So yeah, I've set up service principals which works in similar fashion as using a key vault. It takes a little bit more of admin access to figure that out, but there are usually security people in the organization that can help you out with that. But I've used that to connect my my Fabric workspace to, for instance, I've used it to connect my Azure Data Factory to write to a lakehouse directly in Microsoft Fabric, or used it to connect to a table in Power Apps. So yeah, service principals are the key.
Frankie asks, can a Fabric notebook run a Fabric notebook in another lakehouse or another workspace?
Can a Fabric notebook run a Fabric notebook in another? So you wanna start a notebook in one workspace sorry, my head is a mess now. You want to start a notebook with another notebook in another workspace. I see your hand up. Was that correct, or do you want to respond? Yeah?
I think that's correct.
I've never tried that, to be honest. But you can run a notebook on a lakehouse in a different space. So that just depends on the configuration of the access that you put on the workspace. But I've never tried to activate a notebook from another notebook in a different workspace, but definitely a lakehouse. Yes. Other questions? It's fun with questions.
I think there are no more at the moment.
Okay, then let's dig into notebooks, a natural part of your data transformation. So first part that is essential, because you don't want to slip up and not version control your transformation when you're working with code, because deleting production environments can be a hassle if you don't have a backup. So with both Databricks and Fabric, you can easily connect to Azure DevOps repos for branching and version control, and I'm going to show you that later as well, so that you can see that. You can, but when you're working with transformation in code, you can easily collaborate among the team for solving more complex transformations if that is needed for your solution. You can choose between multiple languages, both in Azure Databricks and Microsoft Fabric. You can use SQL, R, Scala, or Python. So I think those four will cover most of the data engineers out there. I am a firm believer, even though I am Generation Cloud, I would say I've never used a on-premise system in my life. But even though I'm pro cloud and generation cloud, I am still a firm believer that SQL is a natural part of a transformation journey. Not just because it is a well-known standard within the data community, but also because it's very readable for non-technical people. So if you try to read a SQL code out loud, it kind of makes natural sense of what you're trying to do in most cases. But for instance, with Python or R, it's a bit more tricky to kind of understand what is going on if you're not very familiar with the syntax. But nevertheless, there are things that SQL cannot do or cannot do as well as, for instance, in Python, and that is what's so great with both Databricks and Fabric, that you actually can choose between whichever language that you wanna write your code in. And I'm going to show you some cool things later as well with changing between languages. You can choose, or you can use the same tool for many different roles within the organization. So as we said, or like we saw for both Databricks and Microsoft Fabric, you can put your analysts, you can put your data engineers, you can put your data scientists in the same area, and then play together with the same data or data from the different levels, which is also very great, because then you will upskill the organization in the same tool as well. You can add dynamic content parameters and make the notebooks reusable for multiple purposes. And I'm also going to show you one way of doing that later today. And then lastly, you can divide your code into logical operations. Now, everybody get ready to click on the button for raise your hand. I'm not going to point anyone out, but I just want to know how many of you have used data lake analytics or USQL in their transformation. So we have 2. Nice. Okay. Have you ever tried to debug a USQL code in data lake analytics? No. So, okay, so just trust me when I tell you this, it's a hassle. Because if you write your code in a long, multiple rows of code, and it's so hard to figure out where in the code you went wrong when you're debugging. But with the notebooks, you can divide them into different or logical steps and sections, which makes it very easy for you to figure out, okay, where did you mess up, or where did you put an extra comma, or yeah. I think you're on mute, Edward. If you're, yeah, I just saw that you were speaking.
Dimitri has a question, and he said maybe for the end of the presentation, Fabric is clearly the new kid on the block, evolving in a lightning fast way. Is it safe for large-scale enterprises to embrace this rapidly changing platform? And how do you cope with the new features arriving on a weekly basis from a governance point of view?
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try to answer some of it now, and then we can come back to it later, because it is it's a very good question and also a very hard question to answer. What I tend to say when I'm talking to clients that are wondering the same thing is that I ask them, do you have a solution in place already? How mature or how modern is that solution? So if they already have a great setup with, for instance, Databricks or a Snowflake or whatever else, that is also high fashion, I would say. then I would try to maybe merge into Fabric, if that makes sense, using Fabric as what we used to do before, Power BI, and then kind of evolve it into being more business analytics friendly. If you don't have anything from the get-go, then I would sometimes it depends. Yeah, I know it's sometimes it depends kind of answer, but if you don't have a data platform from the start, which is the case from one of my clients now, I recommended them to start with Microsoft Fabric right away, because they didn't have a very heavy duty IT department with a lot of analysts and a lot of data engineers. So having a solution that is very click friendly and very understandable from a user interface, not with that too many configurations needed and so on, it's easier for them to kind of jump into that right away. What I did say though, when we discussed whether or not to start with Fabric or something else, is that when you are embarking on a journey with a tool that is evolving in a lightning fast way, then you also need to be open for change, meaning that the solution isn't fully ready yet. So a button might disappear one day, might be back another day. There might be new features that are coming. So kind of developing as also Microsoft is developing. But yeah, if there is an already modern solution in place, then I would probably go Power BI and then working backwards rather than scrapping all that is existing today within the solution.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to go too much in depth, but at my company, we're migrating away from SAP. And I think we started, mid 2023. We embarked on Databricks, data lakes, Unity Catalog, all of the stuff. And then in November last year, Fabric popped up. And they asked me, can you compare them?
Yeah.
Well, it's a hassle to compare. So,
yeah. And it's also very difficult to compare, especially now when there are, I went to the FabCon in April, and just during those days there were huge announcements on the roadmap as well. So it's kind of, yeah, you can't really compare it now. But then you also see the close collaboration that is between Microsoft Fabric and Databricks. So meaning that when you went with Databricks, you didn't really go wrong either. It's just how you can combine those two in a good way.
Yeah. There's a lot of governance coming, looking around the corner.
Yeah.
Also, they want to set up self-service, and I don't really think that Databricks is a self-service tool. For that, you're more into the Fabric area.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah. I was talking to a data colleague of mine. We were planning a presentation for actually Data Saturday in Oslo in August, where we were also trying to compare Databricks versus Fabric. And I was like, well, you have Unity Catalog. That's really great. And then I went to FabCon in Las Vegas, and they were like, Unity Catalog is coming to Fabric. So I was like, now I have that too. So yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Of course. Okay, but then let's look at some of these items that we just talked about. So connecting your Azure DevOps repo for branching and version control. So you've seen this interface before. This is where we were when we just started. And you have the workspace and to choose between workspace or repositories. So we're going to go to repositories. I have automatically my own folder, and I can add the repo by clicking the buttons. I need the GitHub, the Git URL. I have already set up a Azure DevOps organization and project. So this is the project, and also configured my first repository. So I'm just going to copy that URL that you see on the screen here and paste it into the add repo box. And then you see that the repository name is what I have in Azure DevOps repo. I choose to keep the Azure DevOps services as a Git provider because that's the correct one. And then I can go ahead and click create repo. And then that will work in the background. And what you see here now is that we have now added the pass submit 23. We have the main folder. And then based on the main folder, I can create a new branch. And you can pick a name for the new branch name it whatever you want. Preferably something that makes sense for others as well, so that they know what you're working on. And then you can start working with development in your own branch that is based on the main branch. And when you're ready to when you're ready to push your commit, when you're ready to commit your changes to the repository, then you can do that with Workspace, and then you can do a pull request from Azure DevOps repo to the main branch, so that you don't push it directly to the main branch. But you get access with just a click of the button, which is nice. For team members to collaborate, we will see here that you can, in a notebook, work multiple people together. So I can open a notebook within my folder and my repo folder. I can add notebooks, which I have done here for the silver hosts. And then you see here that there is a small green E at the top of the page. And that is essentially an indicator that somebody else is working in your notebook. So, oh, that's me. So this also works if you have the same notebook open in multiple tabs. You will see that you are there. But then essentially you can work on different parts of the code in the same notebook if you would like that. Then you get all the changes that are happening at the same time. Or you can do over Teams programming, so that you can work together on the same challenges in a transformation journey, which is really neat.
We have a question. I'm not sure when to ask this, but Jon asks, does Unity Catalog function similarly works to the Microsoft Purview? So Unity Catalog from Databricks, I guess.
I am not sure, because I haven't worked that closely with Microsoft Purview. So I'm not going to say that it is or that it isn't, because I don't know Purview well enough to give a statement on that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You can find this information with people like Erwin de Keuk, who did a session on this in Data Next Step last weekend. Databricks is doing a lot on Unity Catalog function, putting it open source. So there's a lot going on there as well.
Mm. Yes. Okay. And then possibility to choose between multiple languages. Now we have the view from Microsoft Fabric. When you are in a notebook, now I'm in my gold host notebook, you can see that we have the language box here. And here is essentially where I choose the default language for the notebook. You can also see here that even though I have chosen SQL as my default language, I can still change the language for one specific section or cell of the notebook, which is really neat because, like I said earlier, some parts are easier to solve with Python or a different language than SQL. So doing it like that is very efficient for transforming your data. Yeah. And when you're changing it on the go, it will automatically put in the syntax for the language that you choose that are different from the default language that you have in your notebook. Yes, and then using the same tool for many different roles. So you have the normal overview of Microsoft Fabric. You have the SQL feature, which is more like a standard. If you're familiar with working with SSMS or SQL query endpoint from Fabric, or when you're logging into a SQL database, you have the SQL query possibility. For the data engineering, you have the jobs runs, the ingestion of data, and getting data from multiple different sources. So you don't really need the additional resource in Azure, like Azure Data Factory. And then you also have the machine learning feature for creating experiments and models and so on. And that's essentially the same thing that you have in Fabric today with the different experiences that you have. The data engineering experience, you have the data science experience, you have real-time experience and so on. So really trying to focus the solution for multiple roles, but within the same user interface, which is really neat. And then you can also, of course, create some dynamic content and parameters and reuse a notebook or code for different things. So in my bronze Airbnb notebook, I have created a widget, which I call database. And that is essentially what I'm going to use to insert a parameter for which database I want the data to be written to. So when I drop or create a table, I say that I want to drop it or create it in that specific database. When I run it, it picks up that I want to use bronze, and then it runs the query. So if we do a normal standard select statement from bronze.hosts, then we should see a output from the CSV file that we had put in. And you see that here, that the result is pretty familiar with what we would expect from a host dataset. So if I wanted to, or if I'm going to write the name of the database in multiple areas, then it would be nice to have the database functionality, because then I could just copy paste that in or everywhere. And if I wanted to run this script in, for instance, my dev and production environment, I could also create a widget for dev and prod to test it on the different layers or the different environments as well. So a pretty neat feature. And you can also, of course, use that from your job or workflows as well when you set up the jobs for transforming the data in Databricks, adding the parameter for the different widgets in the notebooks. So a pretty neat feature.
I have a question from Jonas.
Yeah.
I used to run my Databricks notebooks in ADF via the notebook ID. This was easy to find in the folder structure path. Where do I find this notebook ID in Microsoft Fabric? So can I create a lookup activity on a created table with for each iteration? So it can run dynamically with the use of these widgets, or in Fabric, the assigned parameter cell? Question mark.
I'm a bit unsure, but have you thought about using the data pipeline functionality in Fabric to run the notebooks instead of ADF? Yes, but you still want to have the lookup on the notebook ID in Microsoft Fabric.
There still I need to identify the ID.
Yeah, no, I haven't met that issue yet, but I can see if I can figure it out for you and then come back to you later. But I haven't used the parameter function in Microsoft Fabric, only in Databricks, and also like you have done, run the Databricks notebook through ADF, where the parameter also takes place. But yeah, I will check and come back to you.
Sure. Thanks.
Good. Okay, and then the last part is dividing your code into logical operations, and I think this shouldn't come as a surprise, but when you go into the notebook, you see that you have different sections for different types of code, meaning that you can run other notebooks within the notebook. So you can call a notebook within the same workspace, but so you can call it. And then you can also write your transformation in logical smaller parts so that it's easier to figure out where you went wrong. So let's just say if you haven't worked with data lake analytics before, then just be so happy that you can dig into these notebooks from the start, because it is really, really nice to not having to go through 60 centimeters of code to figure out that you had one comma too many. But yeah, illustrating that each of the sections do different stuff, and we will also go through that in more detail later as well. Yes, you get the point. Good. Okay, so we have done some presentation, we have done some ish demoing, so should we start to try some from source to report ready data demos? Like I mentioned earlier, the demo gods are not on my side, so we will try to do this as far as we can go, but let's just see where we end up. But yeah, this is where you want to go from. All the messy data that we have that don't really make sense without any magic that turns it into actionable insights. And how do we do that? I tend to go for the Medallion Lakehouse architecture. Not because I think it's or not because it's what Databricks claim to be theirs, but because it makes sense for also non-technical people. So when you're speaking to a business representative that has no idea what staging or landing or data marts really means, or understand where they should fetch the data, if you're talking about bronze, silver, and gold in a very easy manner, then anyone will understand that gold is better or considered to be better than silver, and silver is considered to be better than bronze, making it exceptionally easy for an analyst or a report builder to understand that if I'm going to do something, then I probably should do it with the best data, and the best data resides in the gold layer. But so yeah, for our case, the bronze layer will contain all of the raw data. It's going to be the landing zone for our data, and it's stored in the original format. So what we're doing is we're basically just lifting them up to become a table so that we can easily query on them. For the silver layer, we are going to validate and refine the data. So we're going to change some column names. We're going to make the content of a column more readable, for instance. We might change some time format and so on, but we're not going to do exceptionally huge changes on the actual data, because that's where we do what we do in the gold layer. That's where we add the business logic and make it more understandable for our business that we are trying to get the actionable insights for. So all the business logic is going to be placed in the gold layer. Does that make sense? Yes. Bronze, silver, and gold, very easy to understand, even for non-tech people like myself. At some point, at least. Okay, let's jump into where do I have? Here I am. Okay, let's jump into Fabric and now see again where we can run some code. So what I tried to do earlier today is to create a simple table within my simple lake house, but that just didn't want to go. But now at least I see the bronze lake house, so maybe if I click it again, maybe it will create this beautiful table so that I can show you at least that it works. But like I mentioned earlier, when you're working with a new shiny tool, then you also have to be understandable that it's going to be some hiccups along the way. Well, it's funny how like 1 hour can change the whole world. So yeah, for 1 hour ago, I just got an error. I got an error. I didn't understand why. But my code is beautiful and my lakehouse is attached. But obviously, somebody at Microsoft were like, we're going to fix that for Emilie because she has a demo. So the first thing now, we created this beautiful table. If I do and refresh on this, there should be a dim table here, which there are. It is empty at the moment because we haven't put anything in it. So I am just going to click run all and let the notebook do its work. What I'm doing here is, shouldn't have done that because it already exists. So I'm going to do this cell and all below. But essentially what this is going to do is give me a full-blown date dimension table with a lot of nice rows with dates, so that my star schema model will look beautiful, and I can filter my facts with an actual date table. So now I have, just like that, created my date table. We can do a fast select all from bronze lakehouse dim date. Now the first thing I notice is like these aren't popping up blue like they should, and that's the reason why. My default language for the notebook is Python and not SQL, and I see that here that for all the other cells I have SQL. So I'm just gonna go and change that. They became blue, which is nice. And here you have it. So I have one row for each day and also one row for 00 in case I want to do a full month or whatever. But yeah, it looks really neat. And I have last month flag and this month, and yeah, so many great things for filtering my facts. There, it came to me. My words are stuck today. Yes, and then you see I did a change on the common table date. The reason why I see that I have done a change is that I have something that is uncommitted. If I go up here to source control, I click on this. This is already attached to my Azure DevOps repo in the same way that we did for Databricks. You just follow the steps. In this case, I'm a bit bad because I'm attached to the main branch, which is bad. I should have created a branch and then done some development and then clicked back in. But what I want to do, I want to commit my common table date so that I have it version controlled. And the good thing here is that you can see if I have created something new or if I made changes to something that is existing. And I can also cherry pick what I want. So I will commit this, and that went fairly fast. I still have one that is uncommitted, but we're not going to commit that yet. Let's go to bronze. So I have a bronze lakehouse and a bronze schema that we looked at, and then also the dim date, which I now can then move to the bronze folder. Move here. In the lakehouse, if we go to the lakehouse, I can see here that I have some tables. I also have some files. I have some CSV files and I have csv.gz files, which are zipped files that I should have unzipped before I loaded them up. For all CSV files or text files, I can choose to load to table from here manually. So from the first time, I can just say I want this as a table. So for this case, I want to do existing table because it is the same as listings. So I will load this, and then it's loading to that existing table. We might not want to do that manually every day. So that is something that we can either do by code or we can do by code. I will show you how to do that in Databricks, but you could copy paste the code over to Microsoft Fabric if you want to, or you can do it with a data flow and just create from fetching the files using data flows in Microsoft Fabric. You can transform it or keep it as is and then load it directly as a table to your bronze lakehouse. But the same things happens if you want to automate it or do it manually. Okay, so we have then moved some data to the bronze layer. Let's jump over to Databricks to see how we go from bronze to silver. So I will go to Workspace and Repos and Emilie and Pass. And then I will go to my silver folder where I have my silver hosts notebook. I have the widget that I have created. I am calling and running a different notebook that I'm naming uniqueness check. That is essentially to check whether or not a row is unique or new. And then I'm starting off my transformation. So first, I want to just change that yes and no should be 1 and 0 because for some reason my source used yes and no instead of 1 and 0. So I'm doing that. And then I'm changing the column names to be more reader friendly for report builders and analysts. And then I'm adding the uniqueness check because I'm going to use that for later. And then I'm saying that all of the rows in the table that I have or in the views as of now are active because they came from the source today. And then I'm going to check against what I had in the table from yesterday to see, are there any new rows, hence new data? So are there rows that didn't exist yesterday that I have today? Are there any updated data? Do we have any fields that have changed from yesterday to today? And have I any deleted data? And then I do the final transformation and smack that all together with the union. And then I put that transform data into the silver table. And if, for instance, I want to do even more business logic, I would do that in the gold layer, but I think we will keep that there as of now. For Power BI, they could either connect directly to Databricks and fetch the gold tables and read them from there. For Fabric, they would use the semantic model that the Lakehouse provides. Okay, let's jump back to the presentation. Oops. And we did some demoing in Fabric and Azure Databricks. So before we run off, some elements to consider when you're choosing between Databricks and Fabric, or if you want to combine them. So like I mentioned earlier, for Databricks, there are a few more configurations than with Microsoft Fabric. Essentially, that means that you might want people that are a bit more technical to set up the Databricks environment. But it's not that, it's not impossible. It's just for everything to work, you need a bit more technical understanding of the Azure portal than you need for Fabric. For Microsoft Fabric, you pay for a monthly license, while for Databricks, you pay for what you use, meaning that it's difficult for both to estimate what you need because, or how much that you use, because you can ramp up your cluster to a huge degree in Databricks and pay a lot of money for a cluster that you really don't need for your workload. And also in Fabric, you can pay for a huge license that you don't really need based on the workload that you have there either. So what I recommend is to start with a small cluster or start with a small license in Fabric and then increase as you go. And when you find a steady pace of what you need, then you can, for instance, for Fabric, you can reserve capacity, which will make it up to 40% cheaper. And the same also for Databricks. When you know how much CPU you need, then you can also reserve that for a year. But then you need to know that you're going to lock in for a full year on that amount. So do some tests before you pick and choose based on that.
I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
Are there any thoughts on the complete serverless Databricks announcements that you have that they recently announced?
No, I haven't seen that, to be honest, yet. I haven't looked into it, unfortunately. But I guess I need to look into it now.
Instead of the difficult pricing tier with Fabric, he means.
Yeah. No, I think when it comes to cloud, pricing will always be difficult because when you're going with a pay as you go type of format, then you need to figure out how much you're actually going to use and if you're overpaying for what you're using. Well, when you're going for a pay per month, which should be easier, then you need to make sure that you're actually using what you're paying for, because it can be pretty Yeah, definitely a Microsoft licensing PhD is required to really understand the the cost perception there. Yeah, but it is really hard. So that is why I recommend to really test the solution and figure out the sweet spot of what you need before you lock in any reserves, at least for capacity or yeah, workers. But then, yeah, Azure Databricks plus Microsoft Fabric equals true. So there is also a world where we live in where there is a possibility that we want to combine those two. And you have the normal setup with a storage account for Databricks and OneLake for Microsoft Fabric. What you could do is do a shortcut to the OneLake so that you will use data in both places. You could set up OneLake to be your storage account for Azure Databricks. Or you could also use the DFS API to fetch the data between OneLake and Azure Databricks. I've also seen recently that some people use OneLake as their gold layer and then have the bronze and silver layer in Databricks. So I don't think there is a very golden rule set standard for how to do this yet, but people are trying and testing out different stuff. And the good thing is that Microsoft is so on point with the partnership that they have with Databricks. So I don't think you can go wrong with choosing Databricks as your transformation tool either, because the combination of those two are so intertwined. But yeah. Okay. We have now been through these 4 topics. A lot of talking from my side. I'm impressed that my voice is still here. I've been sick all week, so hoping that this will just shoot the cold away. But